Hey, everybody. This is the Daily AI Show live, and today I'm Beth Lyons. I'm Beth Lyons every day. We are talking about what we just said over the last 2 weeks. Today with me is Juni Hatcher, Andy Halliday, and Aaron Malik, and it is Friday, April 19th. Andy, do you want to give us a little bit of an overview of what we've covered over the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks?
So, things happen so quickly in the world of AI, and these days and weeks go by very quickly. And I know that many of in our audience don't really meet with us every single day. There's a small group that show up, it seems, every day, but there's a
Or
lot
listen.
that we cover.
We
Hello,
love
everyone.
you,
Yeah, it's
repeat visitors.
So let me recap what the topics of the last 2 weeks have been. So going back to April 8th, we talked about the AI tools we can't use. This is all about wait lists, right? Yeah, there's a new exciting tool that's shown in the newsletters and is generating buzz, but you have to sign up on a wait list and you can't get to it for a while. And in some cases, as we noted in that show, you never get in. And so that's an interesting show. Then on Tuesday, we did the Here Come the AI Gadgets. And one of the big things that came out of that show and subsequent to that show was the reviews of the Humane AI pin, which seemed quite negative, although there were many different reviewers who did note the future product promise of that particular model. And it just seems like it's gotten really, really bad reviews because the initial implementation was pretty poor. Beth, go ahead.
So that seems like one that we're going to come back to. Do you just want to do the list of all of them? Because I think we could talk about the what's happened since the show.
Okay, then on every Wednesday, remember we covered the latest news in that week, and so we did that on the Wednesday. Thursday we reviewed Ethan Mollick's. This is 2 weeks ago now. Thursday we reviewed Ethan Mollick's book Co-Intelligence, an excellent read. And then Friday, we did a deep dive on HyperWrite's AI assistant. And that is an early model of an agentic type interaction that you can do with that company, HyperWrite. And then this week, zooming forward, we did a review of Udio, the audio generative system. And then on Tuesday, it was Junmi. You'll have to tell us what happened on that one. I think it was just you and Brian, and you discussed Yann LeCun's premise that AI, artificial general intelligence, is not likely to happen as we understand human intelligence, but instead there's an alternate definition of a really super intelligence, which he calls objective-driven intelligence, and that's useful to review. We did the news show on Wednesday, and then just yesterday, we started in and got through most of, if not all, of the truly important parts. But we have another group of chapters from the Stanford AI Index report that was just released on April 15th, on Monday of this week. And that's up to date. There we are.
Thanks. All right. So given that list, where do we want to dive in? It sounded like maybe the Humane pin was the gadget that wasn't out when we talked about gadgets, but now has been out and experienced in the wild.
Yeah, the reviewers who have it and have been experiencing it in the wild probably got it well before, because they were given a Humane AI pin to work with for some time. When you're a reviewer like the prominent reviewers who did did those reviews that got a lot of press, you're reviewing a lot of products. And finding the time to actually interact with a specific AI service is difficult. So let's guess that they had it for many weeks, but they really kind of did a deep dive just as it was being released generally to the public, and there are deliveries happening. I still have a sense of promise about Humane and AI pin, although the publicity, the negative publicity that they've gotten because of some deficiencies of the current product. It's kind of an alpha product. It's not really even a beta product, but you're still having to pay a lot of money. That can scuttle a product. It could make people very wary of ever, buying the Humane AI pin in the future, and which is unfortunate in some respects, because we all ought to be considering all of these things that we're playing with as very early versions of what may ultimately be produced by the companies that have delivered those early pilots.
Yeah, I mean, this pin, should it live, is the worst iteration of the pin that we're likely to see, right? But also, it may not live. I do think that part of what happened, and we've talked about this on previous shows too, was the hype cycle that then became news, right? So the actual review that people were talking about, which was done by Marcus, what's his last name? You're muted,
Brown.
Junmi. Brownlee.
Brown.
Thank you. He gave a really comprehensive review, and he said that that it was the worst product that he'd ever reviewed, but he did not say everything about it is horrible, right? He gave a really comprehensive review, and it sort of sounded like, wow, this was not ready, right? These are some things that are problematic with this. But the news cycle then created this hype about, oh, this is like a horrible negative. So the nuance was lost. The nuance that Marcus had in his review was lost in the story that then got perpetuated.
I think my comments on that product were that, yeah, the review's bad. It's definitely, like, I've watched Marcus's review, and it's certainly not positive. Assuming they don't die from that and similar reviews, I think they need to look at it as just feedback on how to improve the product. And we all know that in the marketing and the product development space, that, these days it's not, we spend 54 years making something and we release it perfectly. We release an alpha version and then a beta version and then a beta 2. So I think in the long term, if they take the lesson that the hammering they got over this, if they take it to heart and work on fixing it, I think it still could become a good product. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. It may need advances in technology before it's better. But as I said, as long as they don't actually die as a company because of the bad press, I think they could potentially pull a rabbit out of the hat given a bit of time. So I'm semi-positive about it.
Did you say rabbit? Did you say rabbit?
Yeah, I did. That was a good segue, wasn't it?
Right. So the other gadget, Rabbit R1, is coming soon. It may be very different. Some of the deficiencies from the user's perspective of the AI pin have to do with its limited modes of interaction, including the projection, which in daylight, a laser projector onto your hand is difficult to read, and then latency. So if Rabbit R1 comes out and it ends up being a really accelerating access point to AI, it could, for at least some period of time, solve the fundamental question about the gadgets, which is, why have an extra AI gadget when you have a smartphone in your pocket, which has ChatGPT, Perplexity, and everything else on it? So some of the features of the specifically designed hardware, like the Rabbit R1 Plus, that is just there, sort of humming in your pocket and ready to respond, and becomes a new point of a mode of interaction with AI, I think could introduce this to a larger body of users than would likely interrupt their Instagram feed or their TikTok feed to go and use AI for some purpose.
Have you got one on order, Andy? That's what I want to know.
I do, and it's being delivered to me sometime soon. It's on the water. I haven't actually spent the time to go do the tracking. There's tracking. It's been shipped. It's on its way from the factory in China. It's on its way. I should get it any day now.
We look forward to your review in that case.
Yes. And the other thing about the Rabbit is, I think, is its relationship with Perplexity, right?
Yeah.
Because Perplexity in and of itself is a fairly fast response, there's not a ton of latency. Like with ChatGPT, you can have a really high speed internet, and if you're going through like that interface, that's a fairly slow response. But also Perplexity gives you access to, if you have a Perplexity Pro account with your Rabbit purchase, right? Like
Yeah, I
that.
think that's right.
And so then you have access to Claude, Meta 3, Llama 3 from Meta. They just announced that that's added to their playground as well. So with Perplexity, you get access to a bunch of different models that you can engage with. And
It's
I'm
not
curious.
clear it's not clear just how complete the access to Perplexity's features will come through.
Okay.
All right. I think it's just going to be, you can, when you do a query using the Rabbit, it's going to go to Perplexity to get that. But I don't know. I'll tell you when I get it.
Right. We look forward to it.
Well, and what I'm curious about is whether the Rabbit can give a visual feed into Perplexity, right?
Yeah.
You can upload a picture to Perplexity, but does that give Perplexity a different kind of vision than it has?
Right.
So, all right.
So then there was the book Co-Intelligence, which I think is worthy of a recap of the importance of this particular publication, or the usefulness of that particular publication to anybody who wants to get a very good introduction to and exploration from somebody who's really been working steadfastly with AI in the context of his educational role as a professor at Wharton, and also doing a lot of research with the education applications of AI. So anybody want to kind of give a short précis on intelligence?
I only got it the other day, so I think I've read like 2 chapters. I can't really tell you much at this stage, but I assume the rest of you, because you're not in Australia, you got it probably a week or 2 before I did at least. So I'm keen to hear what you lot have to say.
Okay.
So I whipped through it so that I could speak intelligently on our show. I could speak co-intelligently on our show. Ting ting. But I am going back through it and I'm going back through it with a friend who's interested in AI, but fairly new to it. So that we have an opportunity to like discuss what it is, right? And I think that's a real use case. If you have people in your life who are like AI, I don't know, I don't really understand it. I don't know where to start. I think it's a really good option, and it can seed conversations, right? So what I have said is, I'll go back through the chapters as you're going back through the chapters, and then just let's talk. What do you have questions about? What does that bring up for you? I think it's a really great kind of structure for that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I want to point out the 2 chapters that are near the end of the book that I think are really worthy of examination. And one of them is about AI as a personal tutor, or as a tutor in the education or in the academic context. And then also AI as a personal coach. And he discusses both of those generalized applications, but also dives into, some elements of application design as he's imagined it. And so those are worth it. The first full half of the book, and I'm thinking about it just in terms of time elapsed, because I listened to the Audible version of it. The first part of the book is just a really good summary and condensed presentation of all the important concepts that you need to understand about AI and how it's influencing our world. So again, from a great professor, really, really good at conveying information. And I have an anecdote to tell, because just in the last couple of days, I've been in the world of academia as my sister, who is a professor at the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine, received a very important award, a Master Teacher Award, for her lifetime achievements, in that academy. And as she was preparing for her presentation, I saw her at the table trying to look on her phone and read through the notes that she had left on the thing, but she wasn't going to take notes up onto the podium. So she's trying to leave these tiny little letters and everything. And so I asked her husband to grab her phone, and I copied the full text of her remarks as she had written them. And I gave them to ChatGPT, and I said, just give me 5 bullet points about this speaker's main, messaging in this thing, and created this condensed thing and handed the phone back to Frank. Frank gave it to my sister, Nancy. And so she looked at it and was like, okay, good. A demonstration of how AI is penetrating the world of academia. I asked my sister, since we're on the subject of, a professor at Wharton using AI extensively, I asked her if AI had really become prominent as a topic of conversation among those who are articulating the pedagogy and the instructional methodologies that are happening within the School of Medicine there. And she said they've had meetings about it, and they've made the commitment that they're going to start to work on that. And they have committees that are working on it. This is a very large, medical education complex in Oklahoma. And but it's very early. They haven't done the kind of thing that Ethan Mollick has done within Wharton in the sort of the business context of Wharton. There's a rich field of opportunity for AI to contribute to the improvement of the abilities of faculty and of students to interact with a vast store of knowledge and receive the benefits of how AI can perform summarization, classification, and support research.
Right.
Have you given her a copy of the book yet, Andy?
No, I really sure. Academicians are very busy. They're writing their own books, right?
Excuses.
In fact, I'm very proud of her. She's in fact the author of a very prominent pre-exam book on gross anatomy that is used around the world. So she's got a lot on her plate and hasn't had the chance to do that. But that's one of the points of friction that I think Ethan Mollick is going to encourage you to overcome, because you really need to start diving in and at least getting a superficial understanding through your own personal practice in engagement with AIs. Get them top on your phone. One of the pieces of advice was to, put the voice chat icon for ChatGPT on your home screen, like not just the home screen, but on your lock screen, so you can just click and just start a conversation with ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think Carl has it mapped to one of his buttons on his iPhone, right? So it's just like boom, now we're in this. Although I'm not sure it's ChatGPT. One of the things that I thought of while you were talking was the usage of this book. It's kind of like all your friends, or there's a whole group of like serious AI people or fans of a specific television show, and you want to jump in season 2 so that you're current. This book, to a certain extent, is what's happened in our story so far.
Yeah.
Right. So that you can just start watching season 2 and feel like you're up to date. Maybe you'll go back and watch them at some point, but you don't need to do all of the watching that everybody else did. You can jump in on the current level of the show. And that is very much what this book does. So even if you've been watching the whole time, I like those recaps on the new season. What did you think was important about the old season? And now we're together.
That's good.
But
I
also,
always go to Wikipedia for updates on shows like that, but it'd be useful to see how good the AI tools are at it.
And so the book is Co-Intelligence, and I want to just explain co-intelligence. The concept of co-intelligence is that AIs are there as our partners, and they're like inert without the interaction with humans. They're not today, at least. Eventually, maybe they will be self-initiating intelligences and doing their own internal thought processes and deciding to come forward with an engagement. But today, they're waiting there as a super intelligence that you can access, and it's only in that dialogue that the emergence of the great capabilities of AI will reveal themselves.
Yeah. Junmi, did you have one that you wanted to circle back to today?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the news shows because they're always oh wow, that came out, and oh, I can't wait till I can play with this tool and that kind of thing. So it builds a lot of excitement. But one of the stories that I didn't get to on Wednesday, I think will have a longer tail and is kind of relevant to our overall relationship with technology. And it was a story I found on TechCrunch talking about a startup called Vana. That's Vana. And so Vana was started up to number one, as a platform to help users be more connected to their data or have more control over their data. So we know social media companies generate a vast amount of data off of everything we do on them. Every click, how long we look at a video or a post, what groups we join, all of that kind of stuff, informs them more about us and our habits. Mostly so that they can associate that with advertising, so that more targeted or personalized ads get them in front of our eyeballs. But this platform kind of takes it from the point of the concept that data is now the most valuable commodity or valuable resource. Right. There was a comment made in a story years ago where data is now more valuable than oil. Right. And oil was king for so long. And so in the age of AI, we have all of these companies who have a vast amount of data or a vast amount of information that can be used for like training data and things like that. Are making all these deals. So, for example, Shutterstock now has deals with everybody. They got deals with Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple, and even OpenAI is signing deals with different organizations for more and more data, more training data for their, to improve their models and when they come out with new ones. So that's a little context. So Vana and their group recognize that data, because of the value of data, people should have more control over it, or at least see some of the action, right? Because right now, data is just, oh yeah, we'll just take it all. Thank you. You go on your day, but there's no compensation for it, right?
Right.
And so this doesn't sit quite well with them. So they created the platform where people can interact with their, with their products. But beyond that, they started a DAO, which is a digital autonomous organization. And this has a lot of ties with the blockchain world and decentralized voting and things like that. But essentially, the group was created so that in this one use case, Reddit users can do collective bargaining with their data, right? So the DAO allows everyone who's a part of it to vote on how the collective data will be spent, who it'll go to, and what kind of contracts and organizations that data will be sold to and how it will be used. So right now they have over 140,000 Reddit users in this DAO, in this organization, voting on how their data will be used, because Reddit is one of the services that has the ability for you to collect all the data that you've done on their platform and make a copy of it. And a lot of companies do have this this part of their service because of existing information and data laws in other regions, like the EU with the GPDRD and stuff like that. And so it's an interesting take on who owns the data, right? If it is a
Right.
if it is a product, if it is a commodity that's made off of your daily, living, the things you look at, the people you talk to, the things you say, the way that you walk, all of this stuff is all, like biometric data, all of this stuff is derived from you. So
Right.
why don't you have a greater control over it? And why don't you get a cut?
Very
If they're making
cool.
billions of dollars off of me, why can't I have a cut of that? Because it's my data, I
Right.
created it, and
Well,
so
thanks.
yeah. So if anything, it brings up that conversation in our relationship to data as a commodity. And I think the really important part is to get there's a little bit of an education and literacy aspect here. It's like
Mhm.
everything that you do on the internet is commodified. It is monetized, not necessarily by you, but it is. Sorry, that
Right.
data has value. So something for people to think about in general on how they interact and with these other organizations, and what kind of expectations maybe they
Right.
should have, instead of how their current relationship is. So
Right.
I thought that was a
And what
very introspective story, and just get us thinking about it, if not, moving towards. I mean, I would love it if, anything that was derived from me was mine, and was
Well, it's
automatically
interesting, right?
copyrighted,
It's interesting. It's interesting because I own my likeness. You can't use my
Mhm.
likeness without my permission,
Yeah.
but my interaction is not something that I possess. Aaron,
And yeah, it's not an explicit right that's covered by,
right,
current laws and things like that. Yeah.
catching up. Aaron, did you have something you want to say about the object-driven
Yeah,
AI?
so I missed the event on the show where we talked about it, but in reading up about this is the Jan LeCun, I think that's how you pronounce his
LaCoon.
name.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, the guy from Meta, and he's talking about how LLMs are potentially limited in how far we can progress with AI, and he's suggesting that objective-driven intelligence is the future. I think that's a very interesting possibility, because the thing with LLMs is that they're largely built, as the article said, they're largely built on text content. And it seems like most of the major AI platforms already have access to an obscenely large amount of text content, the legally allowed versions. Let's not talk about the illegal. But at some point, we're hitting I guess, a limit there. And what he was talking about was the idea that by ingesting video content, which comes with visual and voice and data, like information, the words being spoken, that has the possibility to really ramp up the effectiveness of this tool. And I thought that's number one, that's a very interesting one, because the art of writing is not something a lot of people really like. So we're always going to have some kind of limitation as to how many real world people can put out content in text format, assuming we don't want ChatGPT content just shoved into an algorithm and maybe messed up. But the video thing is a whole different ballpark, because it's really easy for people to communicate visually and record it. And so you've got what does the face look like? How does the mouth move? The eyes, all of that stuff. And we've got the voice. We've got the information being consumed. So it got me thinking, what's the possibility that at some stage companies like OpenAI and Google and Microsoft/Bing are going to start releasing products that are, what's the name of that? I can't remember. We've got one here. Google Home, the little device you can talk to and it talks back to you. What's the chances at some stage they're going to go, maybe we should release something video based that people can communicate with, and we'll even offer it for free if they give us access to use the information that they're putting there. So you
Ooh.
can buy it, or you can have a free copy if you give us access to the data. Now, particularly if you start putting like a search engine built in or something. I think that's a really interesting way to get a ton of video content out of people, and maybe
I feel like thump thump thump, like the major chord just went to minor. Holy crap! No, I mean you can
having
here's the thing. I mean,
so
the
not only
privacy
just
side of it,
eyeballs, they'll have, or not just ears, they'll have
right,
eyeballs.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And
I'm working with the wiretap, but
the deal has to be that you have to opt in for this to share your information. But I can guarantee you there will be people out there who will say, hell yeah, I'll give them my data for free, no problem.
There definitely will. I think this brings up a really interesting topic about informed consent.
Yeah.
Right? And this isn't a psych experiment, so I'm sure that the opt-in is not as like, hey, we gave you like a 400-page to 8-point document. You didn't read it. Bummer for you, right? Like you should have put it in Claude and asked Claude to look and tell you what the bad parts are.
Right.
But that's sort of like, okay, so are we clear on what is possible to do with that data? Right? That would be the informed consent piece.
Yeah, I think that will be less, I shouldn't say less of an issue. That'll be less talked about.
Yes.
Because I think the bigger issue is they can take it anytime you're not in a private space.
Right.
So security cameras,
true,
traffic cameras. The UK is the most surveilled, state in the world right now, with so many security cameras just blanketing almost the entire country there. So if you're looking for video data, that's an aspect. And I know certain applications of AI already do that, and certain, in fact, certain products that have come out because of that have been problematic. Like, I think it was Rite Aid who the court said you got to shut down your security camera or your security program that you're using because the AI was giving tons of false positives on things like shoplifting and all of that kind of stuff. And it was profiling
on people with a darker skin tone.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So it's like, all right, this tech is not there, but it is definitely being used. So just remember, I think everybody should just take a moment and every so often just remember that everything that you do and everything that you say is monitored on some form. And so, does that require you to adjust your behavior because of that? And if so, is that right? But I can digress into that concept too easily. But yes, but to speak to your point, Aaron, there are companies that are already using that aspect, and 100% I could see that package. We're already seeing things like from our entertainment packages, these streaming companies are offering, here's an ad-supported tier, because we're going to jack up the normal tier into a new, double the cost so that you don't have to see ads. And so it's fun. It's kind of funny to see these cyclical approaches to certain things. Like, oh, you found a good thing, but it wasn't good enough for you, so we got to go back. So just as an example of there'll always be a ad-supported tier. So yes, there will be a free version. I totally agree.
Okay, to fast forward to yesterday when we discussed the Stanford report, one of the subjects that we discussed there was the significance, super performance of the closed models compared to the open source models. And so to just summarize what that point is that the investment and the parameter sizes of the large models like GPT-4 Turbo and Gemini Ultra and Claude 3 Opus, those are not open source. You can't get the weights and kind of do your own version of them. You can't download them from the internet or GitHub. The open source models, however, you can. but they're focused, it seems, up to this point, on generating smaller models that are more manipulable by the public, if you will, researchers and the public, but have 90% of the capabilities of the really advanced models, with the exception of, and we made this point yesterday, with the exception of advanced reasoning. Reasoning is what is an emergent property of the very largest parameter size models, which are very expensive to create. Well, you have to update that because Meta just released their Llama 3, which is a 400 billion parameter open source model, which is reputed. We haven't seen it yet because it literally just announced yesterday. We haven't seen it, but it's reputed to be at the level of competence of these highest performing frontier models. So now on the open source front, the premise that was in the Stanford report, which is that open source models just aren't at the same level as the closed ones, that may have just changed. So we brought you right up to date on that.
Well, and what's interesting about that, if we go back to Jan LeCun's perspective on this, and the reason for the objective driven, is that what he's saying is that if you just train on text or those sorts of things, you're not getting a worldview. You're not getting the worldview that we as humans get experiencing the world through all of our senses. And one of the things about the Meta AI drop with Llama 3, one of the quotes was Llama 3 was still learning when they shut down learning, right? It could grow more. And I suspect in this, but it's not growing in the way that Jan LeCun is talking about, right? So like you can continue to get better in these silos, which is great. But it's also not moving toward this next piece, which is understanding a worldview, right?
Yeah.
Like
this is related, Beth, to the idea that we talked about very briefly, which is that there are those who are saying that true general intelligence can't be achieved without embodiment. There has to be a learning process. The AI can't be just in a server somewhere or in a network of servers that are, tens of thousands of chips. It has to have an embodiment where it can learn just as a human child learns, that, when it picks this object up and it shakes it this way and then releases it, it flies off that way in that direction. It may understand the math really well, but to have an embodied and inherent understanding, an intelligence about what the real world is, you have to have a body and you have to be interacting with the real world as we know it.
Wow. Okay. So on that note, thank you very much for hanging with us on a Friday morning for us. April 19th, Brian will be back on Monday. Next week, we are talking about mixture of depths. Go figure out what that means, or come back and we'll tell you what that means.
Come back and we'll explain it.
Tuesday is the show. If you have somebody who's like, I don't know what any of the acronyms that you're using means, that's the show. Tell your friends, come back. Decoding AI jargon, where I'll make a list. Wednesday's news. Thursday is Will AI. Jimmy, what does that say? Friday is Zapier Central, which is Zapier's chatbot. So come back and find out what Thursday's thing means that I cannot read on the slide. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye.
Aloha.